Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Veg Networking Canada, a community where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. It is important to honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us. She is a passionate storyteller and obsessive digital content creator. She is an unorthodox troubleshooter with an extensive network of international connections honed from decades of entrepreneurism and a champion of overcoming challenges. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the founder of EcoLuxLuv Marketing and Communications, along with publications such as Folio.YVR. Welcome, Helen Siwak.
Thanks, Justin.
We're thrilled to have you here, Helen, and we're going to start the same way we always do with our special guests, on a personal note. Can you tell everybody listening more about your own personal vegan plant-based story and how that unfolded?
It's kind of a more of an unorthodox one. I guess we can use that word again. I grew up in the prairies where I was taught that eating meat 3 times a day is what you needed to survive. And potatoes were the best vegetable ever. And so when I moved out to Vancouver 30 years ago, I had a lot of health issues. And I had this amazing female doctor from St. Paul's, and she was trying different treatments. And so she said, you know what, let's just start working on fixing everything. And what ended up happening is we literally stripped my diet down to vegetarian, and all of my health problems literally went away. So it was at that point that I thought, well, this is the coast. I can do this. Nobody's watching me from back home. Nobody's monitoring my meat consumption. I'm cool. And it was a trip to Europe with a business client that actually really opened my eyes up to animal exploitation. It was in Germany. I ran into a group of activists with an anti-vivisection booth at a farmer's market, and I was absolutely horrified. I was working for one of the hospitals in Vancouver at the time, and I knew that animal experimenting happened, but I had no idea that it was something like this. So when I returned, I decided that I was just completely cutting out everything, and didn't go vegan because we didn't really know what vegan was at that time. It wasn't until I spent 5 years living in Greece that my husband started watching all the movies, and he said, you know, when we land in Canada, we are going to be vegan, not just with the food, but we're going to do no leather. We are going to do everything, and we are going to become activists because that looks amazing. So when we came back, which was 13 years ago, we landed as vegans and really found it not so hard to live vegan in Vancouver, and really got involved quite quickly with the activism community, attending protests at the aquarium and at Snowflake, the first store, and things like that, and just really helped bolster and reinforce the beliefs that, you know, our animals are not ours to exploit, and that it's not hard to live plant-based or vegan in today's world. I've traveled the world and we have had no problems. You just have to put a little extra effort in, but it's well worth it.
Well worth it indeed, absolutely. So lots of entrepreneurs who are vegan plant-based themselves, that weaves into their business sometimes it doesn't. So can you tell everybody a little bit more about your own entrepreneur story, like when and where did that start and how it's evolved?
Well, it started when we moved back from Greece, because I went single and I came back with a husband and 4 rescue animals. So we were in a very precarious position for trying to find housing in Vancouver that would take 2 large dogs and 2 cats. And my husband also wasn't legally allowed to work for 2 years. And so I fell back on something that I had done sort of for fun before I lived in Greece, and that was thrifting and then reselling clothes. And very quickly we realized that this was before the real. This was before all these online businesses that are selling internationally now. So we were able to go to thrift stores 1 day a week with $20 and literally get 20 items. And then we taught ourselves how to resell on eBay and on Craigslist, and then gradually taught myself how to build websites, and we were selling online. And we did that for a period of time, and because it was all fashion oriented, I developed a whole new circle of associates that were in the fashion business and in publishing, because they really go hand in hand. And I think it all kind of started when a woman that I had met who had a fledgling women's magazine online called Blush Vancouver reached out to me one night at midnight, and she just said, Vancouver, because I think you would make a great editor. And I was kind of shocked. I said, call me in the morning. You must be drunk. And she called in the morning, and I bought it for $1, and we did up paperwork, and she gave me this website. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to do a women's magazine, I want it to be cruelty-free. All of the food that we're covering is going to be plant-based. All the fashion is going to be secondhand. All the beauty is going to be cruelty-free and vegan. So this was at least 10 years ago. So there was no other publications with these kinds of restrictions on content and lifestyle at that time. I grew it to a point where I'd sort of taken it as far as I could, and I sold it to one of the writers and went into a different, into print publishing with a local magazine that was in the luxury realm. So that was a whole new learning curve. But even in that world, I was able to skew the content towards electric hybrid vehicles, hypercars, and anything that was made by hand. So introducing more artisan content into the magazine and removing any content that I thought was exploitive. And so I did that for 6 months, and then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna start my own magazine and continue to see how far I can push this. And so from there, publishing the magazine was great, because a lot of people reached out for stories, but they didn't have their businesses built to a point where I felt that it really warranted giving them that space in a magazine. So I started the marketing and communications company to help them build their business to a point where my media and other media would be interested in publishing their stories. Because at this point, social media had already begun. Your value as a story then became based on how many followers you had and how much reach that you could give the publication. So you couldn't really go into a publication and say, I have no followers, but I have this amazing product. They'd be like, it's not worth our while. So the both sides of the business really fed into each other. If I did publish a story, then I worked with the brand to help them share that story and really push it into the world digitally. And the companies that weren't quite ready for stories, I worked with them in their marketing and communications to get them to a point where they were ready for stories. And that's how my current business has grown over, well, since 2017 is when I really jumped into the marketing, communications, and publishing as a hybrid model.
Wow, cool. Now, where you talked about where your business is at currently. Next question for you is, where is your business going in the future?
Well, I think we just jumped a major hurdle last month. We launched a new title. Right now, I've been publishing Folio.YVR luxury lifestyle magazine for the last 3 years. We started just before, actually it's probably more, right before COVID. And that one is doing quite well. I'm finishing issue 20 right now, but I noticed that there was a gap in the market, which became really apparent this summer, because post-COVID, Vancouver is enjoying just a resurgence of entrepreneurism. There's every corner that I'm turning at events or just even walking down the street, people are coming over and just being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to have coffee and talk about it? And I haven't seen this much excitement about getting into business or starting businesses for like 10 years. Like it's so inspiring. And a lot of the people that are reaching out are between 20 and 30. And I'm meeting, like I call them kids, 20 to 25-year-olds that have actually already made their first exit and have 10 to $20 million in the bank. And they're launching 3 new apps, and they're working in tech, and they're in real estate. And I was just like, wow, like this is crazy. Like entrepreneurs are getting younger and younger. So they're coming straight out of college with businesses already fully ready to be put out into the world as part of their master's or part of their college practicums. They're starting businesses, whereas before you would go intern somewhere, they're actually sitting down with classmates and starting businesses. And it's just insane how much is happening right now. So in August, rather than putting out an issue of Folio, I decided to launch Portfolio.YVR, which is a profile of 10 up-and-coming entrepreneurs, either in Vancouver or across Canada, and give them the spotlight so that they can tell their story in their own words and share that. And it took off. Like I was so unexpected. It was August. Nobody is reading anything in August, but we had 10,000 reads in the first 7 days and blew me away. That's more than any issue of Folio ever. So people all across Canada, other business people, entrepreneurs, developers, real estate agents, investors, financiers, they're all on the mailing list. They're just kind of like, we want to know who these people are as soon as they launch, because it's kind of that, who's getting to the gate first, because there's so much excitement right now and there's so much to invest and there's so much new talent that I thought the portfolio would be really great. And so we're going to do the next one in December, and I already have a 23-person waiting list. So it's actually going to become more of a very curated product, which I wasn't expecting. And at the end of this month, I'm actually acquiring West Coast Weddings, which is an established print and digital magazine from Vancouver Island. The owner reached out and asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I said, no, but you can hire me and my company to take it over. So I'm not acquiring it. What I'm doing is I'm going to run the whole thing, because she really wants to modernize it, but she doesn't have the time. And she's already done it for 15 years. She's like, I'm tired, but I still want something. So we worked out a deal where I would come in, I'm changing the whole format into a digital flippable, and a lot more focus on people and personalities. And then just at the end of the month, she's going to get a share of the profit, and she's super happy. In fact, she's actually asked if she could be a sales agent, because she really is so excited about the new format. She wants to jump back in and get involved. So I will, with that one, in the print, digital, and all the other versions, I will have 8 titles that I'm going to be looking after. So I think for business-wise, I'm maxed out.
Future looks bright. Future looks bright. So in the marketing and communication space, particularly digital, what are some transformations or trends that you've spotted? I mean, you've already kind of touched on a few, but yeah, what are some transformations or trends?
I think that one of the biggest transformations is the movement away from using influencers. We went through so much during pre-COVID, during COVID, and that year after COVID, where everybody was still putting all their money on influencers. And the amounts of money, like I had a PR agent say, oh, we can't get that sponsored post for $750 because we just spent $40,000 on a New York influencer for one reel. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, this is really, really ridiculous, because people now, we understand that the influencers are getting paid so much to tout these products that we don't believe them anymore. There's no screening, there's no vetting. You didn't have the time to try that beauty product. It was 5 minutes ago, you had a different one on your skin. So the movement away from that went to microbloggers. And microbloggers are really great for very localized. So if you have a business and you want to really promote within your community, a microblogger is great for social media. But I'm seeing more of an interest going back into digital content. So people that I reached out to in the last couple of years saying that we can do stories on your brand, and this is what the fee will be for the story, for the marketing, for the social media posts, and for everything that comes with access to our 35,000 person database. For this amount of money, they're like, yeah, no, we don't see the value in that. They are now starting to come back because they've been burned by so many of these online campaigns and collaborations, that they're coming back and saying, you know what, we need the backlinks. We need the digital asset. We need this for our newsletters. And so I'm just like, oh, finally, it's kind of turning around, which is really great. And the other thing that I'm really noticing is the push for print companies to really push to get into digital, and what that looks like for them. And because I've worked on both sides of it, I was able to create a hybrid product right from the beginning. And that's why I've always been able to always do this. Whereas the print magazines have really, really struggled. They've let go of their staff. I know that local magazines went from 10 to 15 to 25 people, including writers and editors, are down to 3 people now. And then I see on LinkedIn that one of those persons is also looking for freelance work. So if you're only focusing on print and advertisers to pay for your content, that model is just, it's done. Like, you really can't succeed. So I've had more people reaching out to me from other publications just saying, hey, is there a way that we can work together? Because we love your model. how did you come up with this? And I said, well, this is just what I've learned over the last 10 years of, being by myself and not working for other people. So I think it's going to veer a lot more to a combination of like a digital magazine with the social media together with a small amount of influencing and collaborations. And I think that's going to prove to be a lot more, get more money for your value for small businesses and even mid to large size businesses.
Yeah, we have someone echoing those comments in the chat here. Veg Networking Canada's like resident, one of our lawyers, and he says, I remember working on a contract for $70,000 US for 2 Instagram posts by an influencer no one has ever heard of. And so just kind of echoing what you were saying there. So that's interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Switching gears slightly, you might have specific organizations that you're going to mention here, or it might be more of like a philosophical answer. We've had guests answer it in that way before. And the question is, what does giving back or charity mean to you?
For me, because I am a solopreneur, like I work for myself, and literally every penny that comes in stays in my hands and goes into my bills. And people always are talking about, oh, well, you should get involved with, the children's hospital or the cancer this, the cancer that. And I think I have such a small amount of money each month to give to charitable organizations. What we've done is we've decided upon, my husband and I, to take that little bit that comes in. We actually take a percentage each month, and we support, because we don't have a lot of activism happening in Vancouver, but there is key activism around the world that we really, really wish that we could be involved in, like on the ground. So we do put in to Patreon. We found a few people on Patreon that are on the ground that have given up their lives, their day jobs, their comfortable day jobs, and literally are living in a van in a forest, and they are doing the work that we think that we could do. So, $25 a month to a few of those people. There's smaller organizations around the world that sort of pop up on Instagram that need help, dog and animal rescues, especially in countries where there's fires. So it's just like we kind of revisit it every few months, and we put it where we would want to be doing the work. After doing 3 years of animal rescue in Greece, I know that it might not seem a lot for us to do a $10 donation each month automatically to a small rescue somewhere in the world. But to the people on the other end of that $10 can literally buy 2 giant bags of dog food in a different country, or it can vaccinate, or, so it doesn't have to be large amounts. And for me, I prefer to do small amounts to a large amount of organizations. And whether they're legal or not, I don't look for tax receipts. I just say you put your money where your heart is and just do it. Just $5, $10, $15, it's just like it makes all the difference to a lot of people, in other places.
I think that's really meaningful for people to hear, because I think a lot of people, when they do think about giving back or charity, they do think that it needs to be these large sums. They do automatically think that it needs to generate a tax write-off or whatever it might be. So I think that's going to be refreshing for a lot of people to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Now, in terms, you might even have some of your own in this answer here, but we're really trying to, for everybody listening, extract resources that have helped you. And again, sort of focused, if you want to answer it from like the vegan lens, that's great and fine, but more so kind of from like business and entrepreneurship. So are there any resources like books, documentaries, podcasts, websites, apps on your phone, anything like that that have helped you in your, journey of decades of entrepreneurism?
For me, the ones that help the most are the ones that help me do my business better. So I use later.com for all my scheduling. It allows me to increase my social media presence 5 times what I would usually do. So instead of doing 5 Twitter posts per week, I can do 150. Because what's happening on social media is now it's the amount of volume that you're cranking out, that it takes that much, 5 times more than what you would comfortably do, just to be able to catch the attention of your audience. And so I use apps like that. I use Canva so that I don't have to hire a graphic designer. Just apps that make your life easier, that allow you to work very smart and not hard. And the other things that I do is I don't really follow anybody. I don't listen to podcasts or anything like that, but I do watch what Jenny Stojkovic does. She is the founder of Vegan Women's Summit. And after I attended 2 years ago, She's about as close to, I guess, a role model that I um, could possibly have. She's just, I find her amazing because she is a Silicon Valley product. So working with C-suite people in a men's world and being vegan, she is now all over the world, and she has built herself up in the last 2 years to almost these mythic proportions. And I just am astounded at how quickly she's been able to, by just telling the truth and not pandering, and just being herself and just being like, you know what, I like the finer things in life, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I plan on doing, and this is what I'm investing in. And just, she really just puts it out there. And she's about the only person that I actually follow online that is vegan. Everybody else, they sort of they swoop through, the Insta stories, and I pick up on things. But she's the one that, if you really want to understand about cultivated meat and various lawsuits and branding and copyrights and harassment and anything that has to do with being a woman entrepreneur in business, or even just anybody who's a vegan entrepreneur that isn't shying away from who they are and what they want to push, I would recommend following her. She's amazing.
Wow, that's cool. Thank you. And you mentioned Jenny basically kind of as a source of inspiration, which we'll touch on a little bit more in a second here. But speaking of resources, maybe there are people listening who are veg plant curious and are interested, right? And like, as Veg Network in Canada, that's a very meaningful position for all of us. So with that said, earlier on in the conversation, you had mentioned your husband was the one who kind of like brought documentaries to the screen and helped you. Are there any documentaries that you want to mention that helped in that regard?
Well, I never watched any of them.
Oh,
That's the thing. I'm a one and done. It's just like, I made the decision to be vegan, to be plant-based, and I don't need constant reinforcement. Some people, they need to every couple of years watch those again to remind themselves, but it's just like, okay, this, I just changed. But the one that, I think it was Earthlings, and the other one I believe is Dominion. He watched those, and that was, growing up Greek, everything is meat and cheese souvlaki constantly. And he saw those and was just like, oh my God, like, they're so sheltered. He had absolutely no idea, had never been to a farm or anything like that. So those two really helped him. The one that we recommend when I'm speaking with business associates at events and whatnot is, I always ask them, if they are curious, to watch Forks Over Knives, which I think documentaries and movies that have that first person approach, where you're actually seeing real people make real change. Forks Over Knives is really good because of the storylines where you have the health issues with the people that are being focused on. And that, even if you don't care about the animals, you're very selfish, you want to have the healthiest body, and you don't want to die of a heart attack, you watch Forks Over Knives, and that should get you steered right. And then also, for the men in my life, the ones that are just, just eating meat all the time, I recommend Game Changers, because it's, created by two heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lewis Hamilton are two of the producers, and those names carry a lot of clout. And when they watch the football team, going through their whole transition from, to plant-based through that one woman's efforts, it's really hard not to sit back and think, well, if these guys can do it, why can't I? And they're smart people and they make a lot of money. So if this is their decision, this is something that would be good for me too. So those are the two movies. There's no overt animal stuff in them. It's just appealing to common sense, logic, and your health. And I think if a lot of more people went plant-based for their health, that would start them, because they always hear that, oh, I've been plant-based for 6 months now. I started looking into this, and oh my God, I'm not wearing leather anymore. And it becomes that sort of rabbit hole that you want to get them to the first step, and just let them go down it themselves.
thank you for sharing. So, again, you touch on Jenny sort of as a source of inspiration for you. Again, we've had folks mention other individuals, organizations that are sources of inspiration. And again, we've had people talk about nature or just like different things about what inspiration means. So that's the question. And it's big and it's open-ended. It's like, what does inspiration mean to Helen Siwak?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I made all these decisions like 30 years ago. and I just keep rolling with them. I take inspiration from pretty much everywhere. Right now, I'm taking inspiration from, it's almost like the classics, like arts and culture. Somehow I got onto this weird New York art report that comes out each Sunday. I don't know how I got on this mailing list, but it is very interesting to see the amount of activism within the arts community, and not sort of the arts community how we're thinking about. But I'm talking about, Christie's and Sotheby's and the sort of international level of art collecting, and people that are getting really active about in their subject matters about climate change and about animal exploitation and how it all ties together, and about diet and health and gender roles. And so these are topics that are of conversation in the arts community internationally, but you also see it in business and in lifestyle. Like, it's all around us. People are becoming a lot more vocal. They're standing up and saying, hey, guess what? This is who I am, and I'm going to start writing about this. And if you're my followers, you're my fans, you need to just deal with it. People are being very unapologetic that, it's kind of like the world is burning and you're all sitting on your asses. So let's do something about it. And there's this really great rallying cry happening around the world, and I hope more people are listening. But that's where I draw inspirations for people that are stepping out of their sort of cushy comfort zone and just being like, hello, guess what? Here's my big secret, and I'm okay with it, and you're going to love me for it.
Yeah, I think those listening like myself have gotten that from this conversation so far. Is a source of inspiration for you is like radical transparency, and getting on the field and actually playing, and getting out of the stands and getting onto the field. And that is inspiring for sure. And yeah, art, right? That again is something that means different things to different people, and it weaves itself into all different facets of life. But yeah, you can't help but whatever version of art means to you to be inspired by that. So thank you. Now, last question, very, very open-ended. And also, you might be speaking to people who are already an entrepreneur. Maybe they work a 9 to 5 and they're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Big swath of folks. And we've had people like to frame this question as, yeah, of course, I'm comfortable giving advice. And then other people say, oh, I don't want to frame it that way. I'd like to frame it more as these are tips, lessons, and wisdom that I've had, and I can share that with people. And if it works for them, it works for them. So that's sort of the question. Are there any tips, lessons, wisdom, or advice that you would share for people when it comes to entrepreneurship or even veganism?
I think people need to figure out what they want and then figure out how to get it. And that was one of the things that you had said at the beginning, was about being the problem solver. And I think a lot of people see things as very black and white. It's just like money or no money. And I think people need to really start looking at what it is that they can offer. I am always very excited when somebody comes to me and says, you know what, I really want a featured story in your magazine, but I don't have $2,500, which is the fee. And I say, okay, what do you have? And they say, well, I think I'm very interesting. I want it for free. And I'm like, no, there is no free. Everything is monetized in our world. It has to be. The city is incredibly expensive. And if we want to have anything in Vancouver, and if we want to be able to travel like we used to, we have to really figure out ways to get what we want, but also bring something to the table. So I actually had a woman a couple of issues ago who really wanted a feature, but didn't want to put the money in. She just didn't feel that she should have to pay for it. So we actually traded a handbag. I said, I see that you have a collection of Chanel handbags. And she's like, yes. I said, that one is worth $2,500. Do you ever use it? She's like, no. I said, okay, give me that bag. I took the bag, I resold it, and I paid myself for the story. So she didn't realize that she had assets sitting in the closet that she could be trading for things that she wanted. And it's the same as this last issue for portfolio. My husband he walks, trains, and then buses, and then walks to get to work every day. And I had somebody approach me for a story and wanted to trade me a scooter, an electric scooter, for the story. And its value was more than the story. And I said, sure. So now he has a mode of transportation to get to and from work. He doesn't have to sit on the bus and go on the SkyTrain, and loves it. So there's always ways of getting what you want without having to pay for it if you don't have the funds. To me, getting money, of course, is always the best way because that pays the bills. But if there is some wiggle room and if you feel that this is something you really want, and make the pitch. All I can say is no. And that's always been my approach. If I want to get in the door to an event because I know there's at least 20 people in there I need to meet, I sit down and I think, what can I offer the host? What can I offer the organizer in exchange for this? And when you figure that out and you make the pitch, I've literally been turned down once in the last year because I'm bringing something to the table that they want. And then I get to go and do what I need to do for my business. So it's not always about going to a website and looking at the fee schedule and saying, okay, well, I need this service and this service and this service. This is what it's going to cost me. You know, if you don't have the money coming in with your business right now, figure out what you can trade. And for me, that I've been running with this, you know, almost my whole adult life, you know, being in Vancouver for 30 years and just sort of, you know, no career choice, just veering off on tangents. It's always come down to trading to get into the door. Once you're in the door, then you can meet the people that have the money to pay for your services, but you've got to get through that door. So get through it, figure it out, and get in there.
Well, you heard it, folks. All you can do is ask, and all people can say is no. And many people are probably hearing that and thinking of in the world how much more conversation there is and has been around the concept of barter and how that works. And essentially, what you're talking about is reinventing what value means to you beyond an exchange of money, and essentially reinventing kind of like what revenue means. What's revenue driving might not necessarily always be top priority. There are different ways to see things. So taking a different vantage point and a different perspective can pay off big time, pay dividends.
Well, sorry, and there was one more thing. One of the things that happened with my business pre-COVID is I had actually decided that I was going to start building a team, a marketing and communications team with some like a camera person, a videographer, and writers, and all of these stuff. So, because I thought when people come to my website, they want to see that there's a team behind what we're doing. And I had built that team. COVID happened. And then after COVID, everyone's like, so are we going to start up again? And I said, no, because what I had realized is when I had that team, yes, it did bring in 5 times the amount of work, but my costs were so much higher. At the end of the month, I had this much profit. And when I was working for myself, by myself, I had this much profit. And I thought, why would I want to be in charge of a team of 7? So basically just being a ringleader and not actually doing any of the things that I enjoy, but just editing everybody else and overseeing everybody else doing the things that I enjoy for a much smaller piece of the pie. So now I just bring people in as freelancers when needed, and I check the budget. And so my stress level is 3/4 of what it used to be. And I have so much more freedom and flexibility. And that's when I realized for my business to be successful, it didn't mean growth. It meant to just work smarter so that I didn't have to work as hard for the same amount of income. And so that was one of the things that COVID taught me, is that just because you're doing well doesn't mean you have to expand. You just look at other ways that you can monetize what you do, whether it's consulting or writing strategies rather than actually fulfilling the strategies. Because if I had worked with Sandra and actually did her strategy over 3 months, the fee would have been much, much higher for her. And I would have put 3 months into building her business over 3 months of building mine. So by giving her the tools that she needed, I was able to continue building my business and gave her the tools that she needed to build hers. So to me, that was a much bigger win than having a contract with somebody for 3 months.
Yeah, that's a big lesson there. Distilled down to revenue does not equal profit. Interesting. All right, Helen. So before we let people know your website and Instagram, there's multiple websites and Instagrams, but that's the one place we'll direct people for today. Before we let people know that, is there anything that came up in this conversation that you want to jump back to, and or anything maybe that we missed, or any announcements that you'd like to share, kind of leaving the floor open for you before we let you go?
No, I think that I've covered everything. It's yeah, it's, you know, I think fall is just looking really good for everybody. There's just so much excitement in the air and so much opportunity. I'm really, really happy with how things are going.
Wonderful. All right, everybody, you can find out more online, www.EcoLuxLuv.com. That's EcoLuxLuv, EcoLuxLuv.com. And on Instagram, it's the same spelling. It's EcoLuxLuv.YVR. All right, everybody. Thank you for spending some time with us here today at Veg Networking Canada. This has been another great conversation with another great special guest, the founder of EcoLuxLuv Marketing and Communications, along with publications such as Folio.YVR. It's been a great conversation with Helen Siwak, and everybody will catch you soon on another episode of Veg Networking Canada. Until then, take care. Bye for now.